Today we're going back to Amphibia again and talking about episodes that, well, I kind of talked about them since I did talk about my thoughts on the entire first season. I never really talked about them individually. Just filling out that review series. It has nothing to do with the fact that I am in denial over the fact that this show is over. Even now, all these months later, no serene. And going back to Amphibia to talk about these two episodes is a pretty big deal, actually. These are both kind of big deal kinds of episodes. One probably a little bit more so than the other. But both of these, they're important. And it's interesting. Because from what I understand, I read this recently. I can't find where I read it now. But I read this recently and I did not know this. I guess the reason why the first season was made up of interchangeable episodic stories was because Disney did not want this show to have continuity. The crew working on this show had to fight for what continuity they snuck in. And when it proved to be popular, they were able to start serializing the show more, which I find super interesting because I guess, technically speaking, that would make these two of the first episodes where they were able to actually start considering the ongoing continuity of the series because of some of the stuff that happens here. Unfortunately, though, considering how important these are, I only really think one of these is really good. The first of the two, Dating Season, is an absolute laugh riot. It's the episode in which we meet Ivy, the cooler member of the Sprivey ship, of which this is the originator. She's a childhood friend of Sprig's, a tomboyish character who roughhouses with him in the woods. And Anne is introduced to her for the first time when she pulls one of her patented ambushes on Sprig while Sprig and Anne are out walking around in nature. And immediately Ivy is a super likable character. She comes off as immediately appealing the same way that Sprig comes off as immediately appealing. She oozes personality and charisma. She's energetic. A lot of stuff happens whenever she's doing anything. She's very much a cartoon character in the same way that all of these other characters are cartoon characters. And I don't mean in terms of their art style, because obviously this is a cartoon. I mean in that they just radiate comic energy. And yet she doesn't feel derivative of any of the other characters. She comes across as entirely her own person, and so you want to get to know this person more. Anne being Anne, though, she sees Sprig hanging out with this girl that he's obviously very close with, and she starts to ship them. Obviously, because sometimes Anne is just straight up a stand-in for, like, a fandom. Maybe not necessarily this show's fandom, but, like, fandom in general, and how it interacts with the things that it observes. She even tries to work out what their ship name would be. But, because she's a teenager, she, like, spouts all this Teen Vogue bullcrap, and gets Sprig worried about the fact that he might miss out on something if he doesn't pursue a relationship with his friend. And meanwhile, Ivy's family and Hop Pop want to unite their families so that they can mutually benefit. Polly is literally the only character who doesn't have some very personal investment in what's going on, and that actually allows her to look at the entire situation from the outside and remain objective, and that helps them wrap things up later on. So Sprig is thinking that he has to at least try dating this person, whereas Ivy thinks that Sprig wants to date her and doesn't want to hurt his feelings, so they try it, and they try to live up to the expectations of their parental figures. And it doesn't work, obviously, and there are jokes galore throughout this entire thing. Not going to dwell on them, you should experience them yourself. You know how I feel about that. But it's just absolutely hilarious. Like, I'll give a couple examples. They put them in these crazy outfits for this, like, dating ritual thing or whatever. And they do the bit where the characters' sleeves are so big that they can't put their arms down. And then every time Sprig tries to move in this ridiculous thing with these oversized sleeves, like are pants legs a kind of, you know what I'm talking about. It squeaks. it squeaks like a dog's squeaky toy. Or like two bits of rubber rubbing against each other, and it's absolutely hilarious. Because they don't stop doing it. They don't, like, ever forget it. It's not like a one-off bit. It's just, this is the sound that Sprig makes now that he's wearing this outfit. But eventually these two are honest with each other, and they decide they don't want to do this. And so, ignoring the wishes of their parental figures, they run off into the woods to run around the woods like they always do. Except this time it's nighttime. And so when their families follow them into the woods, they get attacked by killer birds, and now it's up to Sprig and Ivy to save them. And they do a fantastic bit here. I'll use this one as another example. They get out of the nest where they were trapped by the evil birds, and then immediately start wrapping up the emotional side of the episode while they're still standing within like 3 feet of the nest. And it's Polly who calls them out for it. Just like she had called them out like 2 seconds earlier for being more invested in this relationship than the kids are for their own selfish reasons, and hurting the kids by doing that, which gets the various other characters back in the right mindset. But like, she calls out the fact that they should probably be doing this once they're back to safety, and then the birds show up again and they have to actually fight the birds this time. And it's like, man, that's exactly what I was just thinking. That like, man, this is a stupid time to be doing this. And then the episode called it out. That was part of the bit, and it was absolutely hysterical. Because like, you expect the story to go one way, and then they go in a completely different way with it, while acknowledging the fact that they got you. Like, the whole dynamic between Sprig and Ivy, as I mentioned before, is that she ambushes him. Multiple times throughout the course of this episode, it felt like the episode was ambushing us. And then they ambush us at the end with a completely different take on this childhood friends trope. Because obviously they're still setting these two up to be romantic interests down the line, which is exciting. They're a fun pairing. I want to see this relationship grow and change and develop as this show goes on, because I like these two together. But whereas in most shows like this, the kid characters who are lifelong friends would be in denial over their own pre-existing feelings, here they really don't have feelings. Until they end the episode off with this bit.
Now you and I can go back to being just friends.
Yep.
Oh, you just fell in love with her, didn't you?
Yeah, I just fell in love with her.
Which not only tells us that Sprig was being honest, even with himself, over how he felt with Ivy up until this point, but it tells us that we are going to see more of these characters interacting. And it also tells us we're going to be seeing more of these characters interacting. Like, this episode, even above and beyond the fact that it's the introduction to this new character, is an episode that you have to watch in order to understand what happens with these two characters later on. It's continuity. Blatant continuity stated by the episode. Which is different. We haven't gotten explicit, undeniable continuity since like the first episode of this show. Even times that we have been introduced to new characters, they kind of just walked into the story and the characters interacted with them. We didn't get like sit-down introductions to these characters where we're told, hey, this is undoubtedly the first time these characters are meeting. Even if it seems that way, maybe they've met in passing. But it feels like these characters have always been there. With Ivy, she's new. And this is very clearly the beginning of something. And then, in the next episode, Anne vs. Wild, where she feels excluded when the planters go off on a camping trip without her and therefore tags along and is just miserable the whole time, but is unwilling to tell them that because she doesn't want to be left out of their family bonding, and therefore things escalate and they end up in a dangerous situation. In this episode, we are, again, explicitly introduced to a new character for 100% undeniably the first time. This is a character even the planters didn't know before this moment. That's Soggy Joe. Just FYI. I don't like him very much. But by the end of the episode, Anne feels closer to this family than she ever has up to this point. They have a heart-to-heart, and while they aren't calling each other family yet, that comes later, the planters do agree not to exclude her, even if she wouldn't be entirely happy doing the stuff they don't exclude her from, which is a very family kind of thing. Sometimes, even though the circumstances that you know you're going to put yourself into aren't exactly ideal for you, the fact that you're going to be in those circumstances with your family is enough that you enjoy them in a different kind of way. And that's what Anne is trying to articulate here. That even though she doesn't like camping, she likes being with them. So she's willing to be with them even if it means camping, because they're starting to see each other's family. But as they have this sit-down heart-to-heart, which is the foundation for this development in their relationship, Anne tells them about the music box for the first time. And we get the tease that Hop Pop knows what it is. Or at the very least, he has a book that knows what it is. Which is also explicit continuity. This is where the show really gets started. And so while I love this show, it is one of my all-time favorite cartoons ever. I am more excited than I've ever been to be talking about some of these older episodes. Because we're just in a great place for discussing this series. Unfortunately, that's all I really had to say about Anne vs. Wild, because I really did not like this one. I thought it was just very tedious. Yeah, it has moments. Like Anne defeating the bad guys of the week with Chekhov's bath bomb was pretty cool. But otherwise, this one was mid. But yeah, so that said, what do you guys think of Dating Season and Anne vs. Wild, if you have seen them? And what do you think about what I talked about the continuity of the show? Do you agree with me that this is when the show starts to feel like it does have continuity? Do you think the fact that the show wasn't allowed to have continuity, seemingly up to roughly this point, was a good call, a bad call? Do you think the show would have been better if it had been allowed to have continuity all throughout? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.